Hello and welcome to Hustlers for a Cause, the podcast for growth-oriented entrepreneurs and executives who aspire to create positive change in the world. Are you in business for more than just profit? Then like and subscribe today and join our channel to become a hustler for a cause.
Hello and welcome to Hustlers for a Cause. In today's show, I'm very happy to welcome a special guest. Her name is Lynn Yap. Lynn is not only a great entrepreneur, she is also someone dedicated to have a positive impact in the world. She is the founder of many ventures, such as the Activate Network, which focuses on supporting women create their own career path. And she is the author of a book called The Altruistic Capitalist, which touches on the very interesting concept of making profit while doing good in the society. So Lynn, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Anna.
Great. As people heard, you've been very busy, involved in a lot of different projects. I'd like to ask you, how many coffees do you have in the morning to be able to do all those kind of
That's a fun question to kick off our discussion. I probably just have one coffee in the morning. Then I go on to have tea. I don't need caffeine to get my day started.
Mm-hmm.
How I do like to start my day is actually with a run or a little bit of yoga in the morning. And then I also have like a journaling practice. It just takes some time to write every morning, get my thoughts in order, to reflect a little bit as to how things are going and what I want to achieve in the next few days or in the coming day. So that's more of how I structure myself and I guess inspire myself and motivate myself for the day.
Great. It's great that you have a routine that you follow every day. I think it's very important to do that, to set your mind for the day and things you have to do. I've actually read somewhere, I think that you speak around 8 languages. Is that right? Or
Yes, at different levels, but yes, it's 8. I grew up in Malaysia, in Kuala Lumpur, so bilingual when I was growing up, Malay and English. And my family has roots, I have a Chinese heritage, so I also speak a couple of Chinese dialects.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that has helped me pick up languages as an adult. So I work at Adidas in Germany, and for instance, that's one of the other languages that I speak.
Wow, that's very impressive. I'm kind of struggling with the languages that I'm speaking, so learning 8 is quite impressive. But great, thanks for explaining. So as I mentioned, you are an entrepreneur, someone trying to have a positive impact on the society. So I think it'd be very interesting to hear how you started, what brought you to wanting to do good in this world on different levels, society, maybe schools, entrepreneurs, corporate world, etc. And when did you start doing all that?
Thank you for the question. I think for me, it's been a gradual journey, Anna. I have a very traditional business background. I started out as a corporate lawyer. And then while I was there, I started working along with investment banks, and I found that work quite exciting. So that's why I transitioned in finance into the investment banking world, where I worked to take startups public, including companies like Facebook and Groupon, which is quite a while now. While I did all the things that people said would be the formula for success and happiness. Get a good education. I graduated with an MBA from Morton. I got a great job as a corporate lawyer and then moved on to investment banking. So these were the recipes for success and happiness, if you like, that I was, that we're told. I was told when I was growing up. But even after I've achieved all that, I found that there was something missing in my life, like that there was meaning that was missing. And so I left investment banking and I started to work with companies that were a bit more focused in increasing the impact on the environment as well as the communities around them. I was looking for a way in which that I could make work more meaningful for me and that I could create and impact myself. So while I was, I had my day job, I worked at Estee Lauder and as well as at Adidas. On the side, I started to volunteer to mentor entrepreneurs, to mentor women, to get involved with different ways in the community. Ultimately, I found that what really inspired me or motivated me or energized me was working with women. I want women to have an equal opportunity or equal access to have a voice at the table, to have a seat at a table. And so that's why I left Adidas, which was my last corporate role, if you like, to start the organization Activates Network. And that is an organization that works with companies, that partners with companies to deliver leadership programs.
Right.
Now, these leadership programs are a little bit different from what you might typically see in a couple of ways. Firstly, experiential learning. So the participants in the program, they work together to solve a business problem, and that helps them, improve the self-confidence, improve their coaching and mentoring skills, presentation, critical thinking, problem solving, and just collaborating with people who are different from you. So firstly, it's experiential learning. Secondly, it's also working with multiple generations. The participants are women employees from the companies that Activate Network partners with, as well as female students from school. So you have, let's say, girls between the ages of 13 and 15 working with women participants to solve a business problem. And that is actually quite different because you now have to start thinking, okay, how am I going to communicate with a group of people that I wouldn't usually work with in order to solve a problem? And so that is one way in which you flex how you motivate people, how you influence people, how you communicate, how flexible or adaptable you are. So that's another aspect of the program that is different compared to other leadership programs.
Very interesting.
And the final thing I want to say about the leadership program, how it's different, is that it delivers a positive impact on three stakeholders of the business. So firstly, for the companies itself that partner with Activate Network, there's a real business value that is delivered to the business. So for instance, if there's a specific business problem that the participants of the programs are working on, they get an answer. And it's usually the students, usually the target market of the business problem are the students. There's that perspective, there's that younger generation perspective that companies don't necessarily have direct access to. And now they have direct access to the insights and perspectives of this niche market. It's sometimes an underserved market as well. And so they have that business value and business impact. So second, on the women employees, as I said, my vision is one day for women to have an equal opportunity and equal access to have a seat at the table. Well, now with this program, they develop and grow their confidence. They develop a network with the other women participants that help them and support them in order to move their career forward. It also gives them real practical practice for their leadership skills. They coach each other, the other women participants, but they also coach the students in the program, helping the students deliver, do some of the exercises to come up with solutions. So basically, it trains them to deal with people who are different from them, with different perspective, and gives them practice to flex their leadership muscles. And then finally, on the students themselves, which is, the community, it's social impact. These female students see women who are working in different types of roles. So they're inspired, they have role models to look up to. And I have to say, for me, it's really powerful, the impact on the student when there is an adult that's outside their usual circle, that's outside their family circle or their where they grew up in, that pays attention and is willing to invest time in their development and in their growth. That being seen by someone else and accepted for who they are gives a lot of confidence to the female student. And you can see them literally blossom in this program, and it helps them, it inspires them to actually strive and try a little bit harder in school to finish their university and to look into different career opportunities that might not be aware of before. So that's, I guess, the leadership program in a nutshell and what I'm working on at the moment.
Right. Definitely, you seem passionate about that program, and I think it's very interesting. And I think everyone deserves to have some sort of a coach or a mentor in their life. And as you say, those girls might have, parents, family, friends, and schoolmates. But at the end of the day, having an adult, maybe in a company, brings a lot of a different perspective perspective on how to do things and give them trust in themselves and confidence as well. So I think it's a really, really great program. I've actually, talking about mentor, have you ever had such a kind of mentor in your life or not really?
I can't say a formal mentor relationship. I've had different people in my life support me at my work. Of course, my parents have always been an incredible support to me. They've always guided me in the things that I want to do, and really unconditionally. Anything that I do is they give me the unconditional support. So not any formal mentoring relationship, but I've had different people in different times of my life who said, "Oh, maybe you should think about this." So I've been very fortunate in that way.
Yeah, that's great. I think it's important to find the right people, to surround yourself with the right people so that you can grow and you can see things differently and make some steps towards your, personal or professional goals as well. What do you think those girls, when they start the mentoring program, how are they feeling? Are they kind of scared? Are they doubting about themselves? What are some of the self-doubt that they have? And how do they leave the program at the end? How long is the program actually?
All very good questions. So the program is only 3 months, and you'd be surprised at how much they mature and they blossom in that 3 month period. So usually when we start the program, they're of course a little bit shy, perhaps even intimidated, a little bit anxious to start off. Also, the women participants who coach the students are a little bit nervous because you don't want to do the wrong thing. Everybody wants to be on their best. So women and the female students are nervous on their side. For the students, I think there's a lot of uncertainty in that age. Obviously, is it 13 and 15? It's a difficult age for anyone. So there's a lot of uncertainty. What if I make the wrong decision in terms of my career? What if there's like social media anxiety and all these other things and pressures that students of that age face. But in that 3 month period, when they have their one-on-one sessions with the women coaches, women coaches, typically how their train is in the program is to share their stories. How is it that women have overcome some of their challenges? What is it that they've done? And to be vulnerable a little bit, to be vulnerable and to share that it's okay, that we all face difficulties, that we all feel stressed, we all feel anxious. And that helps, I think, the girls to also then feel more confident that they can overcome anything. And they know that there's no right or wrong decision, that everything will take its time, and I guess they feel calmer at the end of it and definitely more confident. We also do impact assessments at the end of the 3 months. So from the school perspective, I get the perspective from the teachers who then observe the implementation of these programs. From the school perspective, a lot of the students, that the school reports that the students become more engaged in their classes because there is also an implied focus on digital and technology, on innovation, because I think it's important for women to be heard in this space. They also start seeing career opportunities within the tech and digital space. So, for instance, students who are interested in the arts, in design, we talk to them about different careers in user experience, user design, that they might not have known before. They would think, oh, well, I'm interested in art, I'm just going to be an artist. They are not aware of the different types of careers and opportunities that they are. You can work with Pixar, can work in animation. That is something that then they get excited about, and they start thinking, oh, yes, I should start playing around in the digital space and understand how technology can help me express myself artistically from a design perspective. So I have to say, at the end of the 3 months, the girls are quite energized and a lot more confident than when they started, because they have now been exposed to all these different things and ideas.
Right, absolutely. I understand that. And it's true, when you are perhaps a student, you're not aware of all the opportunities that exist in the market or in the world. So working with people with a different background, either educational or professional, kind of widen your, opens your mind and widen your perspective. So absolutely, it's very, very interesting. I think we all need to have some sort of mentor or coaches in our lives. So, talking about those mentors, so we talked about those youngers and people learning from mentors, but what do mentors learn from those schoolgirls? Because obviously, it's a collaborative work, so surely it's on both sides. So what's your opinion on that?
Indeed. And as I said, the impact assessment is also done from the women participant perspective. So for the business, the women then feel that that the company is doing meaningful work and that is creating an impact for the community. So the women feel more loyal and more engaged to the company brand because they see that this is something that the companies are invested in. It's invested in the community. So they feel more connected to the company. They also then develop relationships with the other women participants in the program that they might not usually work with because they come from different business units, and also because it's now 100% virtual program. They connect with women also in different parts of the world. We've had a women participant from South Africa before, and we have women in the US, we have women in Europe. So it's an opportunity across the organization for women to connect and to make those relationships. And to your point, I think a good one to bring up, I think what the women participants realize is that they learn so much as well. When you work with someone in that age group, they're still very open and they're very energetic and enthusiastic. They become more creative and more open-minded as well. The women, they are more inspired, and they start to, when they do the problem solving stage, when they are in the problem solving stage together, they can see, that is not something that an adult would say in terms of ideation. Students think in a very different way from how adults, because we have frameworks, or based on our experiences, we process things differently. Right. So the women, in one sense, become more creative and become more open-minded as well. And then, of course, when you coach someone and when you mentor someone, a lot of times you start to reflect on your own experiences. Absolutely. So they become better leaders themselves. They understand, they are able to a certain extent even see some of their blind spots they might not have noticed before, just based on working with the students in that way. Each woman participant has 2 students that they work with. And usually how I like to set up and match the participants is the women will get 2 students who are very different from each other. Right, interesting. So for instance, one who is extroverted and one who is quite introverted. And that means that because as managers that happens, you don't have someone that's exactly, your team is not doesn't all look the same. Sure. The members of your team are all very different. And you have to learn and adapt the way you manage, the way you lead different people in different ways. Absolutely. You have to find different ways of motivating them, of guiding them and helping them grow. And so it's a real practical experience when they have to adapt and change their communication styles with a student who is extroverted or with a student who is introverted. You have to, maybe, for instance, this is one that I typically advise the women participants. With introverts, give them a lot of time to process. If you're asking them to do a task or to prepare for the next session, tell them in advance what is it that they need to do. Right. Whereas some of the extroverted students can talk on the fly, and they're quite comfortable in not having that space and that time to think and reflect. Whereas introverts in general, the students that we work with, they need that extra time and space to think about things in order that they get the full benefit of this mentoring/coaching relationship. And so the women then also learn how to communicate with students and with people in general who are very different. Ways of working, ways of communicating, ways of thinking as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, it sounds like a pretty big learning curve, I guess, for people who are mentors. Actually, maybe it can come as a surprise as well. Because, as you said, adults, we are kind of biased. We have our own experience. For many years, we've been doing things maybe the same way when, younger people are kind of fresh, new in the market, and they figuring out things. And it's a great initiative, I believe. And still coming back to mentors, how do you select, or how does the company select who will be eligible to be a mentor? Are there specific criteria, personality trait, or work experience? How do you select them?
Good question. This is actually done on the company side. That is up to the company to select which participants they want to be part of the program. On Activate side, I guess the criteria is that, there is all the security checks. I'm not going to go
Sure,
into
of
all of
course.
that
Yeah.
because we're dealing with 13 to 15-year-old girls.
Right.
So there are security checks.
Mhm.
But really, for me, it's people who want to invest their time to help and support the next generation of leaders.
Mhm.
You remember, they're 13 to 15-year-old girls. So what you're imparting onto them has a very big impact. If you can imagine, this is
Absolutely.
one person that they will probably remember what you're saying for a
For the
very
rest
long
of the
time.
life.
So
Sure.
also how you respect that time. So be present. If you show up for all the sessions, you should show up for all the meetings punctually and just be prepared. So that's on the activate side, that the women participants want to invest
Mhm.
and support that future generation of leaders. I think that's more or less the basic criteria,
Right.
very essential criteria.
Of course. Yeah, we make a bigger impact on people or on the world when we are dedicated to do that and motivated. So obviously your mentors are motivated to commit their time and invest, in those youngers and working with them. Absolutely. Great. And you talked about the fact that this is an online program that around the world people are participating into that program. Do you see a special interest from a specific region of the world? Are you focusing on a specific geographical area? Could you tell us more about that?
Yes, of course. So I have to say I'm more focused on the English speaking market
Sure.
than anything else. The schools I'm working with so far come from the UK,
Mhm.
but from the company's perspective, they can be from anywhere, and they are from Europe and from the US, the UK and the US. I'm looking to grow to expand to schools in the US as well. So
Excellent.
far, it's been UK only, but I'm looking to grow that too. I think sometimes people want to impact the communities that are closer to home. So I'm looking to grow that market as well for companies that are based in the US.
Right, excellent. Now, this is a really great project. And as you say, there's a huge benefit for those young girls to participate in that program. Would you say as well that when those girls end the program, there's a benefit that kind of leaked into the society as a whole? Can you see the bigger impact on not just those young girls, but when they get back to school? Can you see other kinds of impact, like positive impact on their schoolmates or, among their friends, family, and when they start working later on?
I can imagine that there is a positive impact. Because of some child protection policies, we don't always have the contact details of the students once they leave the program and once they
Right.
leave the school, actually. So I can imagine that they have conversations with their family in terms of what they're doing, and maybe even talk to them, inspire their family members and the people around them to be more conscious about the environment. Because a lot of the business problems that we deal with are related to sustainability. So whether that's sustainability in terms of the environment or the community, creating a more sustainable communities, I think the conversations I imagine that these girls have in their homes with their friends and with their family might inspire some of the people around them to think a little bit more consciously. And there was one year when we talked when the theme was related to mental health, and actually they then had a week when it was a mental health week in the school where what the students wanted was to reduce the stigma of talking about mental illness. And this was kind of student led rather than something that came from the school and from the teacher. So it was coming from the perspective of the students. So that was something that happened as well. And I actually just thought of another one. Another one was talking about, again, sustainability of the environment, and this time related to energy.
Right.
One of the student participants observed that the computers were not turned off at the end of school. So she went around the different computer rooms, counted the number of computers that were left turned on after school, and then calculated using an online carbon emissions calculated how much carbon emissions was wasted. And that, she did a presentation to the teachers, and so that also inspired the teachers, like, okay, we need to start turning off the computers after class every day.
That's great.
So those are some of the examples of impact that I have seen the students make after the program or even during the program, really. That's outside
Sure.
I guess, the confines of the
Yeah,
program.
that's great. Funny story, but yeah, I think we have an increased awareness of things around us in terms of the environment and social, or as well governance, right? We talk about ESG. I myself was involved in the ESG word in the past. I know it's becoming bigger and bigger, so it's great to see that. You talk about sustainability. You talk about better leaders, perhaps in the future. That I think brings me to your book. So you wrote a book. It's called. So maybe you could tell me a little bit about what is this book about, and yeah, why did you start, with the idea of writing a book?
Good question about why I started writing this book. I wrote it really at the start of lockdown in 2020, in March and April of 20. That idea came around then. There was obviously a lot more time because I live alone, and I was just closed in my own space with no commute, and there was a lot more time on my hands. And so one of the things I thought I would do would be better time than never to write this book that I've been thinking about.
Wow.
And I chose to write about businesses as a force for good because I think it's a topic that's quite close to my heart. I really believe that if businesses focus first on doing good, profits and growth naturally flow. We always need, and this is not to say we need to focus solely on creating impact. I think financial discipline needs to be there as well.
Right,
Because if
absolutely.
you're not financially disciplined, if you do not create a sustainable business model, then you don't have the resources you need in order to create the business, in order to create positive impact, whether it's on your employees and the communities around you or the suppliers that you work with. So
Right.
having all of that in play, whether it's creating a healthy bottom line, creating the impact for employees, for partners, for suppliers, for communities, I think that is possible. Being more creative about creating win-win situations. I wanted to put that story out as how other business leaders, people working in large companies or people working in smaller organizations, how business leaders like that are creating that arrangement, win-win situations where impact can be created for all the business stakeholders.
Right, very interesting. Yeah, I think it's a very hot topic actually in terms of being able to make profits but being responsible. I think people tend to question whether if we do things right, are we truly going to have a sustainable profit over time? But there are more and more research that shows and proves that if you do things well on different levels, E, S, or G, right, you'd be able to maintain some sort of a good financial performance over time and be less impacted by different things that happen in the world. And so your book is called The Altruistic Capitalist. One of the questions I have would be, can we all become an altruistic capitalist? Is that possible? Do we all have the skills and equipped to do that? Or does it take a special character or personality to do that?
Good question again, and that's something that is actually in the book. I think from my interviews, I had 50 odd interviews for this book and doing the research for it. The three main themes that came up again and again as I was doing my interviews are mindfulness. Leaders who are very present and mindful, practice mindfulness in day to day, tend to be more altruistic capitalists, if I should say.
Yeah.
Second, they're also curious. They ask questions. They don't just make the assumptions that sometimes, as I said, sometimes as adults, we just rush in and try and figure out the answer immediately,
Absolutely.
but we don't question. We forget that curiosity that we had as children to say, but why are we doing it like this? Test those assumptions. And I think that having that curiosity and that interest sometimes unlocks certain things that we don't see before we actually create that solution. So yes, the second one is curiosity, and the third one is collaboration. I think we can develop grit and go further and achieve our goals if we think more in terms of partnerships. Who is it that we can partner? Let go of the ego of saying, oh, I have to do this myself, and think of how is it that we can work with someone else, and even with our competitors. How is it that we can work together to create this win situation? Because what we want is a more sustainable planet, whether it's from a community perspective or from the environment perspective, so that we can all appreciate the benefits of what we have for a much longer time and more sustainably. So I have found that these three things came up consistently as I was interviewing corporate executives, social entrepreneurs, and how that they developed over time to become more in order to create positive impact on all the business stakeholders.
Right.
To balance the different needs. I think a lot of times people think it's a trade-off. Oh, if I do this, then I can't do this. But I think these traits actually help the business leaders that I interviewed to think more creatively. How is it that we can actually create a positive impact and balance all those different interests?
Right, very interesting. Yeah, I think the 3 points are very important. And it's not just about hard work, but I think it's also having the mental space, like doing mindfulness practice to be able to step back and reflect, right? When we are right into the thing, sometimes we can't think clearly. And one very interesting point that you talk about is doing that collaboration. And asking for help is not an easy thing. I think we all struggle with that for some reason. I don't know if that was the case for you, but you had to speak to 50 people. So 50 people contributed to your book. How was it at the beginning? Was it an easy exercise for you to ask people to contribute? What was kind of the beginning of writing that book?
It was a lot more work. I just admit it. Writing a book is a lot more work than I thought. And it really does take a village to do that. I had the benefit of working with a publisher that helped guide me through the process. So there were different editors who helped me come up with the structure and the shape of the book and how is it that I can go along, and then all the way up to publication and even post publication, how I would do that. And to your point about asking for help, you're right. This is something that is difficult. I struggled with it a lot earlier on in my career, but as I have worked in different countries and a few times in my life, I actually learned to let go of that ego and to be okay with asking for help. And I think one of the things that I've learned a lot in this process of writing the book, it's not just asking for help, but being okay to be naked to the world to a certain extent. Because when you write, this is my writing process, there's a little part of me that goes into the book. I continue to have a blog that I write, a weekly article series. Every time I publish something, it feels a little bit vulnerable because there's a piece of me that goes out there.
Right.
And being okay with that and having the courage to overcome that fear of being judged or of not being good enough, imposter syndrome, all of those fears that naturally come up in whatever it is that we do. The past year since starting to write the book, I've become a little bit more comfortable as I face that fear each time to publish something or to ask for help and to also collaborate with people.
Right.
I think what we sometimes fail to realize is how much we have to give to someone else too. And mindfulness practice helps with that.
Right,
being mindful.
absolutely. Oh, that's very impressive. And I think, you've been doing quite a lot, and every time a little bit more. And the more you do it, easier it gets with time. And I think this is maybe one of the secrets behind, exposing yourself, doing things really, because it's quite scary to be judged by others. So yeah, it's great that you've been able to overcome that. And hopefully you do the same for other projects as well. But now you're kind of used to it. So I guess it's just easy for you to do that. About the process of writing the book, I guess you went into that book having some sort of ideas of where you wanted to end and, kind of a direction. Did you feel that changed over time? Did you actually get a result different from what you thought because of anything, conversation with business leaders or your own development? Was there any difference between the start and the end of the book?
No, actually, I didn't have a fixed idea as to what I wanted to say. I mean, it wasn't a fictional story in that, okay, this is how I see the story arc. How it came together was because I did those 50 odd interviews with different business leaders as well as social entrepreneurs. It was like lots of post-it notes on the wall with like different notes and different ideas. Right. And then I slowly pulled them together. It was a little bit of a modular writing process. And how my developmental editor guided me was, don't write the story in a linear way. So it wasn't written in a linear way. It was just stories based on my conversations with the different leaders, written on its own. Right. And then we move things around to structure it to make it into a book. So in that sense, there wasn't a fixed idea of what I wanted the book to look like at the start. It all just kind of came together at the end, where things moved around. And of course, then I had to change some of the words in order that the book flowed. But yeah, it was kind of a modular approach where okay, this piece goes here and this piece goes there. It was really like lots of post-it notes.
Sounds like a lot of post-it notes around, and should have a big wall to be able to put all your ideas. But it's great you've been able to, kind of arrange that, and with the help some help as well. So this is a great process. So now writing a book sounds like a big mountain to me, and it's very, very impressive. But I guess it helps you also see your ideas and the progress that are being made in the world. And talking about progress, I guess you've spoken to those, business leaders and entrepreneurs. Could you tell us about some of the initiatives that you've discovered by speaking with them, and the impact that it has on communities or on employees? So if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Sure, of course. And now there's a lot more businesses doing sustainable work than we think. For instance, there was one social entrepreneur I spoke to, and he was then employing ex-veterans, people in the Detroit area that were unemployed. So he was then helping them create gainful employment in order for them to sustain a living wage. There's also another one that's based in London, and what she is doing is she is training refugees in the community in technology skills, and then matching them up with companies who are looking for people with technical skills. And so there are actually a lot more companies that perhaps fly under the radar that we're not aware of. Mm-hmm. They're doing a lot of positive impact for the communities.
Right. Yeah, I guess as you said, it's a hot topic, and I think a lot of people understand that it's important to try to make a positive impact and to run businesses in a sustainable way. So it's really great. And if you've interviewed 50 people, 50 people is already quite a lot. So if there were 50 people here and there, that makes it an even better word. So talking about the content of the book, if people read it, what would you say are the kind of the 3 key takeaways from your books that people can start implementing today?
3 things that people can start today. I had one recently, actually. One of my readers wrote to me, and I thought it was quite nice, because one of the things that I share from the mindfulness chapter is give people that space to reflect and to think at the start of the meetings. This was a practice that's done at Eileen Fisher's, a sustainable fashion company for women. Mm-hmm. Oftentimes, and you might experience this as well, we're running from one meeting to another. We barely have enough time to breathe, let alone to think, what is this meeting? Why am I here? What are we talking about? Right. And so what they do at Eileen Fisher is they start each meeting with a minute of silence. Mm-hmm. They give people time to just, whether it's closing their eyes and putting away their devices, just that space to breathe and to reflect. And then they start. It's like, how are you doing? Right. I think being human to each other, and that's an easy one that we can do. It doesn't even take that much time. Sure. It just takes a little bit of interest and saying, how are you doing? After that minute of silence, and that creates more safe and secure work environment. Mm-hmm. It gives each other respect in that space that helps us to be more productive and to perform better at work. So that's one that's easy to do. I would also, another thing I like to say is we have a lot more power in our hands than we think. We can be more conscious. We can be more conscious about who we buy from. Like, what are the products that we are consuming? Do we need to consume such products? Mm-hmm. Who is it that we're working with? And who is it that we're investing our money in? Are we investing in companies that are sustainable or not? And then the third thing I want to say is, I guess just start and do something, whether it's investing an hour of your time to support a local community, to be more conscious of where is it that you're consuming stuff, whether or not you're consuming too much. Those are the 3 things I think that you can just really start thinking about today.
Great. Yeah, because I guess having a positive or trying to make a positive impact on the world is such a big mission. So sometimes it's a little overwhelming to know where to start. And there are many people doing many things. So yeah, I guess those kind of 3 takeaways are important for people to really think what they want to do, how, why, etc., and to get started, because we can have the ideas, but practically speaking, it's always a big challenge. So now, having interviewed those people, have you had any surprise on how things are done, or do you feel there are so many progresses compared to when you started trying to get involved in that sustainability arena? Yeah, do you feel things have changed a lot over the years? And the next question would be, what is left to be done to achieve that even greater world?
Good question. So I am quite an optimistic and hopeful person. I think in the next, let's call it 24 to 36 months, we will start to see a change where companies become more conscious and become more thoughtful about how they do business and how to create a sustainable business. Partly that's because the World Economic Forum proposed 21 stakeholder capitalism metrics. And so that means that companies will have to start thinking about their diversity composition. How is it that they're governing their business? Are they investing enough in the local community? So some of these metrics that are in there that will become mandatory reporting. So in
Right.
addition to the profit and loss and balance sheet, now the companies will also have to start reporting on these non-financial metrics. And when they are forced to, and when companies are obligated to report on these metrics, then they start thinking about it, because what is measured is done.
Right. And yeah, absolutely. And I think the fact that you mentioned that these are mandatory reporting, it's obviously forces companies to report on those non-financial criteria. And I think that's important. Around the world, there are many frameworks that companies can use as guidelines, but at the end of the day, it's kind of optional. So, and that was a question I had about accountability. I think it's important to hold companies accountable for what they do. What do you think are the other things we can do to have companies be accountable for the good and the bad actions that they do? Do you have any opinion on that, or any experience on this accountability tool that we can use?
I think a lot of times we say, well, companies have this, but companies are run by people, right? And we are part of companies and organizations. I think it starts with us, each one of us in the organizations, in the groups we work with, to think a bit more consciously, to raise our voices when we see something that is not right. If we think there's a better way of doing things, if there's a better way and more sustainable way of doing things, speak up. If we see unconscious biases that are being in front of us, speak up, say something. I think that starts to change how things are being done, how things are being talked about. And that makes, in little ways, overall and over time, there will be a bigger impact on the organization, on the culture, and on the people around us.
Great, absolutely. And do you think there are some kind of resistance from some industries to, to have sustainable practice, or some resistance from industries or people? Have you encountered this kind of resistance around you?
In different conversations over my career, I have heard people talk about but if I do this, and then I won't have enough resources to do that, for instance. There's that trade-off thing. So I think one of the resistance comes from that mindset, it's a win-lose situation. People are not thinking and win. So it's a mindset thing. And another way is perhaps changing the way businesses are done. Businesses to a certain extent have been focused so much on the profit, studying from Milton Friedman's article in 1970 in the New York Times saying the social responsibility of business is to increase profits. I think that has been taken too much to the extreme. And if you really read the article properly, then he also talks about ethics of the business and how is it that we can grow businesses sustainably. And that has start to change with the Business Roundtable and with global CEOs back in 2019. We need to start balancing the interests of the other stakeholders of the business as well, not just the investors.
And you're right. I think balance expression is very important here, is very key, because people used to think about either making money or just being sustainable, but the two can come together. And I think this is at the core of your book and all the projects that you've been involved in the past and perhaps now. And one question I had about the future plans that you have, is there anything that you want to get involved even more in the future, or any new field you want to dig a little bit and see what's out there?
I am not sure if there is one that I'm thinking about specifically. I have always been someone who is quite open and listening to what comes up. So so to answer your question, no, I do not have a field in mind, but I'm open to different opportunities at the moment.
Right. Okay. So we're coming close to the end of the session, and I'd like to ask you one important question. So people have listened to your initiatives, and you're a really great, dynamic person. It's very inspiring to hear about what you've been doing. And now, if you could just make everyone in the world do one thing differently, could you tell us what would it be?
So the thing that came up in my conversations for the book and the research for the book is what surprised me was how many of these business leaders are practice mindfulness, whether it's, going out for a workout in the morning or having a gratitude practice or even journaling. I would like to encourage our listeners on the show today to perhaps spend just 5 minutes a day to be more mindful, whether that's sitting and meditating for 5 minutes.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think this is very important to be able to do that on a daily basis and takes that time to, to stay mindful and to detach and get some time to be able to rest our mind and see things from a different perspective. Great. Thank you so much, Lynn. It was very interesting to hear about your background, about what you've been doing. Very inspiring. And I do hope I'll have the chance to be able to read your book. Definitely, you've convinced me that I should definitely take a look at it and perhaps myself become one of those leaders that also do things in a responsible way. Lynn, thank you so much for coming on the show. And we hope to have you again as a guest, and you inspire a lot of people, and I wish you all the best for your venture.
Thank you so much for having me, Anna.
Thank you. Bye.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of Hustlers for a Cause. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss a new episode. This helps us keep interviewing incredible individuals and sharing their remarkable stories with you. This episode of Hustlers for a Cause was brought to you by Blabberjacks. If you're an influencer that's creating meaningful change in the world and you're looking for help increasing the reach and distribution of your message, contact Blabberjacks today. See you next time on Hustlers for a Cause. Until then, keep hustling.